There is a massive problem in Valorant. I've noticed this more and more as the acts have gone on, and maybe you've noticed it too, but you haven't really been able to put it into words. Right now, Valorant is facing what many people say to be the worst map pool to ever plague the game. Our current map pool is Lotus, Breeze, Icebox, Sunset, Bind, Split, and Ascent. Some of these maps you might like better than others. For example, for me, I don't really have too much of a problem with Sunset, Split, and Bind. However, I'm not the biggest fan of Ascent, Lotus, Breeze, and Icebox. They're not fun to play on, and I think I know why. The maps in tactical shooters aren't meant to just be visually different to spice up the game. I know most of you probably know this. The map layouts completely dictate how the map is meant to be played. This might sound obvious, but every map is meant to be played in a slightly different way. For example, a map like Breeze has 5 lanes that the defenders are meant to guard. B main, elbow, mid, halls, and then A main. Now, 5 lanes is a lot to hold. That means if we divide our resources, one player would be watching each lane, which is not ideal because one player can't really hold off a push from 5 people. Luckily, in Valorant, we have agents like Cypher who can control a lot of space with their tripwires and camera. This is why you'll see Cypher so commonly on Breeze, because he can trip halls and then he can trip B main, and suddenly we have a lot of space covered. We have one person who's covering 3 different choke points, and now our team can stack one location and fight for that space a little bit more aggressively, and it is a stronger hold. Another example of an agent that is really good on Breeze is Viper, because she can cover a lot of space and she can stall for quite a long time, even after the nerfs. The only other controller who can really cover as much space as Viper is Harbor, and Harbor's stall just isn't as good, so he's normally not going to be favored over Viper on such a large map. The amount of stall that Viper brings to the table buys her teammates times to rotate over towards the site and assist her if they are getting pushed. Another thing on Breeze is that mid control can be really helpful for the team if you're able to take it, because it can provide more context on what the attackers are doing. You can divide the map in half, and now suddenly you know that the attackers are locked into a certain area. For example, check out this cool setup that you can run with a Cypher, where he cams out B main and sees that nobody is walking elbow. Now you can have a player walk down elbow and jump onto this ledge, and suddenly the map is completely cut in half. You know that the attackers have to be leaning towards A. With this information, you can just go stack A and be ready for the push. We have a trip in halls, our Cypher has the information in elbow, we have the map cut in half, and our Viper is stalling A. This is a good setup, and you're in a very good position in this round. Now, other agents can do these sort of things, they just can't do them quite as well. You can still dart elbow as Sova and gain that information. It's a little bit slower, but you can do it. Or you could still trip halls as chamber. It's not as good because you kind of are locked into that area. You can only really play A or mid now, but the trip will cover halls for you. Similarly, you could still smoke as Harbor, it's just not quite as good. The problem isn't always that you have to do things differently when you pick off meta agents, is that you kind of have to do things worse a lot of the times. Breeze was just one example. Let's take a look at another one on Lotus now. Lotus is a 3 spike site map, which, similar to Haven before it, generally will favor for the defenders to fight for space on defense to limit the options of the attackers. On Haven, you would see them fight over a lobby control, and on Lotus, it's not that much different. You will fight for rubble control or you'll fight for mound. You do this because if you can hold them to that one choke point on rubble, that means that you can just have one player posted up for information, and then you can rotate your teammates to the other side of the map. This is nice because this info is really early if the enemy tries to come A. You will notice right as they are coming out of rubble, and this gives your team plenty of time to get there and assist. However, if they get through rubble, now some issues start to happen. They can walk up towards stairs, or they can go and open the door into tree, and now you have more lanes to worry about. This is why the attackers aren't just going to give you the space for free, they are going to fight for it. So if they're going to fight for it, that means that you're going to have to invest a significant amount of utility to push them back and hold them to that choke point. This is where things like Raze's paint shells, Omen's blind, one-ways, breach stuns, gecko flashes, gecko mollies, stuff like that becomes really valuable. That's why agents like Raze, Omen, Breach, Gecko, and Fade are all really strong on Lotus, because they can fight for these choke points really aggressively and hold the attackers back. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having agents that are good on maps. But because this map is played like this, it can make it kind of difficult if you don't have these agents on your team. Picture this, you are 2 seconds into agent select, and now you have a Jet, Reyna, and Chamber on your team. None of these agents really have anything to fight for mound or rubble with. Sure, they can take a duel and disengage, but they can't really push out there if they have 5 enemies just barreling down on them with util. You better hope that your last 2 agents in this team comp are Omen or Breach, because otherwise you are never taking Rebel control. And this isn't to say that you can't win with a team comp like this, but your team comp isn't really built for fighting Rebel, so you're going to have to figure out how to do it otherwise. And unfortunately, that's kind of how the map is played, so it's going to be pretty tough. Sometimes you're just going to get the better team and you're going to win regardless of what your comp is, but does anybody else feel how much more difficult it is to play the game when you have agents like this rather than just like a normal team comp? I can't be the only one who gets a Reyna on my team and just feels that the game is more difficult. In Counter-Strike, you have different maps that favor different things, but everyone has the same utility. It's not like the enemy team is just going to inherently have better utility than you. Everyone can do everything. But in Valorant, you have different maps that favor different things, and some agents just aren't good on those maps, which is fine in pro play. You just pick whatever team comp is favored. But in matchmaking, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a Reyna on your team every game. Which Reyna, if we're being charitable, is only really good on 1 or 2 maps. It's frustrating though because these 3 agents, which we'll call the Holy Trinity, are very selfish agents. People don't pick these agents with their team in mind, like, oh, we need a Reyna right now. They pick them because they're like, I'm going to frag out and carry this game. And the 3 of them largely do the same thing. Jett takes a duel and dashes away. Reyna takes a duel and then dismisses away. Chamber takes a duel and then he teleports away. To break down their other utility, Jett has 1-second smokes and an ability that makes her go up. Chamber has a gun and a tripwire that he's not even going to place most of the time. And Reyna has 2 flashes, which she probably won't use, but they're okay. I'll give her that. But now we're playing on Lotus and we have no abilities to take space. We're playing on Breeze and we have 0 stall. Or we're playing on Icebox and we have no info. The problem isn't that Reyna exists in herself. It's that 3 of Reyna exist and they are never going away. Once an agent is added to the game, they cannot be deleted. They are there forever. And oftentimes, it's not necessarily about how strong their abilities are, it's what their abilities do that become the problem. So recently, we saw Viper get nerfed, for example, but these Viper nerfs aren't really going to target what makes Viper so strong. What makes Viper so good is her wall. Her wall can go up and down constantly throughout the round, and this makes her fantastic in double controller setups. For example, on a map like Bind, you can throw your wall towards A and your smoke orb, and then you can constantly throughout the round throw that up and down and make the defenders wonder, are you pushing up here? Are you not? Have they walked into U-Haul? They have to use utility to counteract this. Every single time the wall goes up, there's that question again of, is somebody using this to their advantage? You do the same thing on Sunset as Viper. You just stuff all of your utility into the A main choke point, and now the defenders have to worry, is Viper going to be walking through here? And I'm saying this, and most of you have probably never seen this because Viper isn't played that much in matchmaking, because Reyna's played a lot in matchmaking. And Jett and Chamber and all of these agents that are selfish and they make the game simple. You don't have to think about anything, you just take gunfights and you get away. But as the maps develop and as the players get better, it's becoming more and more frustrating on your team when you have agents like this. Because there are agents in the game that just do things better and they make it easier to win. For example, I don't know if I could ever think of a situation where I would prefer to have a Reyna on my team over a Raze. What Raze brings to a team is just far too valuable. She has the double satchel, so she can take space incredibly quickly. Her paint shells make it so you basically just can't run through a choke point at the start of rounds, so if you want to use it on a default, that is incredibly strong. Her boombot can gather information, which is something that no other duelist can really do other than maybe Yoru with his ult. And her ultimate, even though there's the joke about all the whiffs and stuff, of course, is still one of the strongest space-taking abilities in the game. When Raze pops a rocket, I want to run away. I don't want to run towards her. The things that Raze does for a team are things that Reyna can never do. And this isn't to say these agents are all bad. If I have a Chamber on my team, that is fine. We can set Chamber up for good situations and good fights using the utility from our other agents. But it's when you have all 3 of them on the same team, which is going to happen far more often in matchmaking because nobody cares. And then on top of this, you have these complex maps that they require a bunch of different things. You have Breeze, which basically calls for different agents that need to be in the team comp. Have you ever tried to scale up on A site on Icebox without any sort of initiator to help you with it? It is an absolute nightmare. You have no utility to clear the close angles, so people can just jump up onto pipes, they can go into nests, they can come up close, and it becomes a pretty big nightmare to actually take that space. Based off of this, I originally thought that the game could only really include more basic maps that it feels like anybody can kind of wrap their heads around. But like even then you have maps like Ascent, where locking Reyna means that you're going to lose on some of that entry value on a map where there's only 4 choke points and they're pretty narrow. On Ascent, it could be pretty important to have some dive so you can get past these choke points. You can get out of B main or out of A main and onto site. But with Clove entering the meta and people are playing Clove and then people are playing Reyna, now suddenly we are losing 2 different dive agents. We could be having a Raze or a Jet and an Omen instead of Clove. And this isn't the end of the world. You can solve this by just doing splits and going through middle a little bit more, but this is a very difficult thing sometimes to organize in matchmaking. What I mean when I say it's a problem that can't be solved, it's just that there's too many agents in the game right now that do nothing. There are a handful of agents that are really good and you will see them very commonly at the top level or in pro play, but there's a lot of agents that are just never going to see any play. There are a lot of agents that just do things that other agents do, but worse. And maybe that's okay, it gives people the expression to play whatever agent that they like and have fun with that. But it also makes the game significantly more difficult for their teammates, which is very frustrating to deal with. It's not necessarily that the map pool sucks for me, it's that in most situations when I'm playing on these maps, I don't have the tools that I need to play the map the way that it's meant to be played. And as long as these agents are in the game, I'm not sure if this problem is ever going to be solved. It does feel like ranked in Valorant is forever just going to be this place where people lock whatever they want, I guess, and then they just run it down. I can't see how you're going to create a competitive environment in a ranked game where basically like half the agents aren't really that playable. But that's just my take. I could be entirely wrong. Maybe I'm just being a little pouty or I'm just a little bit of a Reyna hater. At the end of the day, I still enjoy the game. It just feels more and more like a coin flip nowadays. It's like, did I get the good teammates or did I just get the bad ones and I lost? And of course, that's always cope. There's always things that you could do better, but that's just the feeling of the experience of playing ranked, I feel like, nowadays. Let me know what you think in the comments below, though, and yeah, definitely feel free to subscribe to the channel. I don't post very often anymore, but I want to do more stuff like this. So thanks, guys. Peace out.